Hello again guys, it's Carly from the Poetry of Nice, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about 5 ways that you can start to spot higher quality items while you're out thrifting. First things first, welcome. If you are new here, this is a channel all about reselling online. I currently sell on eBay, Poshmark and Etsy, and I do that while being a stay-at-home parent, so this is a sort of part-time work-at-home job for me that allows me to contribute to our family income, and also I love to thrift, so it works out really well for me. On this channel, you're gonna find everything from haul videos to sales videos to tips and tricks and all kinds of other cool stuff in between. So if that sounds interesting, please do think about hitting that subscribe button down below, and don't forget to say hello in the comments so that I can say hi back. So essentially in this video, I'm gonna give you 5 basic ways to identify an item that is potentially higher end or worth more money when it comes to reselling online. These are very basic ways. These are basically my stop and look it up signals, if you like. And so what I'll actually do is I'll kind of like scoot over a little bit, and I will pop a couple of photographs up here as well, just so that I can go ahead and reinforce visually what it is that I'm talking about in these tips. So the first thing that would make me stop and look up an item is the label. I know that seems obvious, but let me go into a little bit more depth about what it is about a label that would make me kind of pause in a thrift store or at a yard sale or a rummage sale or wherever it is that I am sourcing to sell online. So the font can make me stop, and also just the overall design of the label. If it's a little bit like extra, as you like, Anthropology comes to mind, like those labels that are oversized, or they have maybe some embellishments on them like a button or some embroidery, something like that. Or for instance, something like Aviator Nation, their label is absolutely huge inside, and it actually has the story of the company on it. When I first found Aviator Nation, I had no idea that it was a bolo. It is, by the way, so look it up and become familiar with it. But it was that particular label that shared that story that made me think, okay, this is definitely worth grabbing, because they went to so much effort in order to share that. I also think of something like Free People, where their most current tag is like a little metal tag, and again, that's that little bit extra, like it's a material that would cost more to manufacture perhaps, and so that would catch my eye also. And the last thing about label that I wanted to point out is many resellers talk about this, tacked on tags. So what that means is that instead of being machine stitched all the way around the label, there will be like small single tacked stitches in the corner of the labels that are usually done by hand in the manufacturing process, and oftentimes, again, that's a great signal of a higher end item, because quite frankly, more care has been taken when applying that label to the piece. Alright, tip number 2 is where the item was made. So there are certain countries where, you know, it will usually say in the neck tag of a garment, made in, that will stop me in my tracks pretty much and make me look up that item. Oftentimes this is coupled with other things that may be a signal of quality, but I'll go ahead and let you know which ones kind of catch my eye the most. So made in USA, this can often mean higher quality, because it costs more, quite frankly, to make it over here in the USA than it does somewhere like China, where you can do mass production at a much lower cost. Or it can also signal that an item is potentially vintage, so it's usually something that will make me stop and take a second look. Not always the case though, sometimes things are made in the USA and they are fast fashion, that's just the way it goes. Next one would be France, Italy, Germany, Canada. I've had great luck stopping and looking up items that are made in Canada, again for the same reasons. It costs more to manufacture things over there, and so oftentimes that's a signal of a more expensive brand. And then if you want to get into vintage, you know, maybe if you have like a vintage Nike piece or something like that, something like made in Korea or made in Taiwan, ROC, Republic of China, made in like West Germany, anything like that that would signal to me that there is a potentially an approximate age to it. It would tell me that it's an older piece. That can often make me look as well. Okay, tip number 3 is feel and fabric. So fabric content can often be a deciding factor for me when it comes to deciding whether or not to source a piece, even if it's a slightly lower end brand. But the fabric contents that I find do very well, and I will always use them as keywords in my title, as well as having them in the description with their, you know, actual content, their percentages and whatnot, are things like wool, merino wool, cashmere. These are pretty obvious. Linen does pretty well as well. Even if it's a blend, linen tends to do pretty good as well when coupled with like style, brand, size, all those different factors factors to help an item sell. I also like to pay attention to if there's organic in the fabric content. Perhaps it's like hemp, perhaps it's just an organic cotton. Either way, that can often help an item as well. And I will include the word organic in my title as a selling point. Tip number 4 is the details. So higher end items tend to put more effort into their details, as it were. Kind of like I was talking about with the label, where like sometimes they'll be embellished or oversized, or they'll have some more information about the company, things like that. I would say like buttons that are individually marked, that can be a great sign of quality. Rivets on things like denim, if you flip them inside out and you look at the back of those rivets, oftentimes they will be marked with a company name as well. That's also a great place to start if you're trying to authenticate a higher end item. Not always the case that it will make sure that it's 100% real, but it's a great starting point, and oftentimes this can tell us that it is potentially worth more money. I'll also look at things like the stitching. When I say details, it's really about the quality. You can often tell just simply by touching a piece if it is a quality, well-made piece, as opposed to like a very lightweight, very kind of flimsy, fast fashion type piece. So I think we could all agree that the more that we source and the more that we lay hands on different brands and different items, the more that we become accustomed to what feels like quality and what does not. It also sometimes stands out to me if an item is lined. If I find a pair of wool pants and the company has taken the time to line the whole thing, that can often be an indication that they retailed for more perhaps, and I would probably stop and look them up as well. And tip number 5 is style. So when I talk about style, I'm really talking about like the cut, the prints, anything like that. Things that kind of come to mind for me is things like Lily Pulitzer, where they have those very loud prints that also, like Jude Connolly has the same kind of feel, Trina Turk. They're things that are instantly recognizable. So if you see a print that is really kind of over the top and you can kind of tell that there's a quality feel to it, I've found many new brands this way just by stopping and looking them up. Jude Connolly, for instance, kind of story time. I found a dress and it was a very loud print. I touched it, I felt that it was like just a well-made fabric. It was a little bit heavier, even though it had some stretch to it. I could just tell that there was sort of some money, I suppose you could say, behind it. And then when I looked at the tag, though I wasn't familiar with the brand, it was made in the USA. All of those factors combined made me stop, look it up on my phone, and realize that it was a good sale, and it sold within a week for $40. So just a tip. Oftentimes cut can come into play. If there's a very classic cut, I'm thinking again like St. John or Max Mara, these kind of things that are just very classic, very timeless, sort of very sophisticated, if you like, that can also catch my eye. And the final thing I will mention is logo prints or like spell outs. So something like Coach, for instance, though I'm not sure if we consider that super high-end anymore, but those tend to have like the all-over logo prints. I mean, Louis Vuitton, you know what I'm saying. I'm not really talking that high-end when I'm talking about this kind of sourcing, but those prints are instantly recognizable, and they reflect what the company is, their logo, their actual name. Those as well are something that I would stop and look at, simply because that company is trying to sell its piece essentially by using its branding. Therefore, I would assume that there is some decent branding behind it. I hope that makes sense. And that's it. Those are my 5 main tips for starting to spot higher quality items quickly when you are outsourcing. And of course, as always, if you have any tips about how you spot higher quality items when you're outsourcing, please do think about popping them down below in the comments so that we can share within the community and have a little bit of a chat back and forth. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed yet, please do think about hitting that subscribe button down below. I would love to have you join us. Don't forget to say hello in the comments so that I can say hi back, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye, you guys.